them in, they said the lady should sit over here, the man should sit over here, and
Okay, it's a little bit over 11, which was our initial 5 minutes, so I'm just going to go ahead and jump right in, okay? We are going to be discussing in our next section financial reporting. Excuse me, I'm sorry, guys. I'm actually starting the presentation now.
It's gonna work.
In this section, we will be discussing financial reporting, okay? We will discuss financial reporting requirements, the types of financial reporting, and who can prepare the financial reports. Year-end financial report is a summary of the financial activity and the financial position of the association. The annual revenues and expenses will be displayed in the financial report. In this report, it's discussing actual numbers. This will show what money came in and what money was actually spent during the fiscal year. It'll also cover the association's prior fiscal year. So, for example, calendar year January 1 to December 31st, or a fiscal period such as October 1st to September 30th. So what are annual revenues and expenses? This may look similar to a budget, but now we're looking at what associations actually spent and received, and not just an estimate. The numbers may be more or less and than what was projected for the budget, and this usually is collected through banking information to collect accurate data. When should you prepare, complete, and provide an annual reports to the unit owners? This must be done within 90 days after the end of the fiscal year, or annually on a date provided in your bylaws. The association shall prepare and complete or contract for the preparation and completion of a financial report for the prior fiscal year. This must be done no later than 120 days after the fiscal year, and a copy or notice must be available and provided to unit owners. That's the deadline. All right. The most recent annual financial report must be provided at no cost to unit owners. And this must be done within 5 business days upon receipt of a written request by the association. Unit owners can request financial reports at any time. There are different types of reports based on revenue. There are 2 types of financial reports. A report for cash receipts and disbursements. These are typically for small condo associations whose annual revenues are less than $150,000. The second type of financial report is financial statements. There are 3 levels: compiled, reviewed, and audited. Associations with 150,000 or more in annual revenues are required to prepare a compiled, reviewed, or audited financial statement. Statements contain more components than receipts and expenditures. So these are more detailed documentation of how money came in and money went out. A report of cash receipt and disbursement is required. Sorry, I jumped a slide. A report of cash receipts and disbursements is required for annual revenues less than $150,000. It must be done on a cash basis. It is reporting the receipts and expenditures as they actually occur. So when the money was received as revenue and when it was paid out as an expense. Cash basis refers to how the revenue is recorded on your income statement only when cash is received. Expenses are only recorded when cash is paid out. This report must include disclosures. The disclosures are reserve disclosures, special assessment disclosures, limited common element disclosures. Financial statements are the second type of reporting. There are 3 different levels as mentioned prior. We will discuss them more on the next slides. Financial statements are different from cash receipts and disbursements because they are more required components and are done on an accrual basis. In an accrual basis, revenue is accounted for when it is earned or billed, meaning before any funds are actually collected. Expenses are recorded despite the fact that funds have yet to be actually paid for those expenses. The bill for goods and services are considered a liability to the funds. At a minimum, statements shall include the following components: accountants or auditor's report. It should include a balance sheet, statement of revenues and expenses, statement of changes in fund balances, statement of cash flows, notes to financial statements, and reserve disclosures. Compiled is the lowest level of financial statements. This is for revenues that are $150,000 but less than $300,000. Based on information from association records, such as a bank statement, you can collect this information. No accounting tests for accuracy would be performed for a compiled financial statement, and the term accuracy refers to testing based on GAAP, which is the general accepted accounting practices. Reviewed statements must be prepared when revenues are at least $300,000 but less than $500,000. So let me repeat that. Reviewed statements must be prepared when revenues are at least $300,000 but less than $500,000. It must be prepared by a Florida CPA. The CPA will conduct some analytical procedures and inquiries and will provide limited assurance that the statements are accurate. Once again, the term accuracy refers to the GAAP principle of general accepted accounting practices. Audited financial statements, however, must be prepared as well for revenues for more than $500,000. This also must be prepared by a Florida licensed CPA. With this one, the CPA must conduct an examination of original source documents, verify balance sheet accounts, perform a substantive test, and provide assurance that the statements are in accordance with the GAAP principle, which is general accepted accounting practices. All reports and statements require revenue disclosures, even if reserves are waived. So all reports and statements require reserve disclosures, whether or not reserves are waived. Reserve disclosures for each reserve account must include the beginning balance, the amount of assessment and additions, the amount expended or removed, the ending balance, the amount of annual funding required to fully fund each reserve. It also discloses the method by which the income and expenses were allocated to the unit owners, the specific purpose or purposes of any special assessment to unit owners pursuant to section 718.116, subsection 10 of the Florida statute, and the amount of each special assessment and the disposition of the funds collected. The amount of revenues and expenses related to limited common elements shall be disclosed when the association maintains the limited common elements. That expense is for those unit owners entitled to the exclusive use of the limited common elements. So let's ask a question, right? Can an association prepare a higher level of reporting than what is required by the revenue threshold? Yes. However, oh, did I skip one? Yes. However, this only requires a board's decision. This is not a unit owner's decision. So, a board can decide that an association prepare a higher level of reporting, okay, as it relates to their revenue. What are the pros and cons with that? The pro is it requires more detail and disclosure, and it has to be done by a CPA to test the accuracy within those numbers. The con is higher levels such as an audit can cost a lot of money to prepare. So that's the downside of doing so. So what about providing a lower level of reporting than required from the revenue threshold? Are we able to do that as well? That's also yes. However, this is not a board vote decision either. A majority vote of the voting interests present or by limited proxy at a properly called meeting of the association would be required in this instance. Please note though the time frame. It must be taken before the end of the fiscal year. So, for example, 2024 report, which normally is due in 2025, if you want a lower level of reporting, you must have the vote in by the end of 2024. Okay. This applies to the current fiscal year. The same vote also needs to be obtained every year for a lower level of reporting if it's proposed. Like everything, there's pros and cons. The pro to this is a lower level of financial reporting is cheaper, costs a little bit less. But the downside is it may not reflect an accurate position of the association's funds. So that would be the association's decision in which they would like to either a lower level of reporting or a higher level. Under no circumstances can an association waive the requirement to prepare a year-end financial report. A financial report must be prepared every year. Okay? Finally, let's summarize the basis and preparations of the financial report statements discussed in this section. All right, a report of cash receipt and disbursement is done on a cash basis. Association must prepare this when their total annual revenues are less than $150,000. The next three are financial statements. All the statements are required to be done on an accrual basis. Compiled statements are prepared when the total annual revenues are $150,000 but less than $300,000. The last two statements Reviewed and audited statements are required to be prepared by a Florida licensed CPA using the GAAP principles. The reviewed and audited statements have the largest revenue levels, starting at $300,000 but less than $500,000 for reviewed and $500,000 and higher for audited. Now it's time for our quiz. Are you guys ready? Are you still awake? I mean, we're trying to make it quick. We're almost there. All right, so the first question. What are the 3 levels of financial statements? Is it A, compiled, reviewed, and audited financial statements? B, complete, reviewed, and audited financial statements? C, compiled, related, and audited financial statements? Or D, compiled, reviewed, and associated financial statements? A? Are you guys sure you were paying attention to me? Was it clear enough? You understood everything I said? Let's see. You are correct. It is A. Good job, guys. Compiled statements are for when revenues equal or greater than $150,000 but less than $300,000. Has an accrual method of accounting. Reviewed statements are when revenue is equal to or greater than $300,000 and less than $500,000. This has an accrual method of accounting and must be completed by a Florida licensed CPA. Audited statements have revenue equal to or greater than $500,000, has an accrual method of accounting, and must be completed also by a Florida licensed CPA. So remember, the reviewed and audited statements must be completed by a Florida licensed CPA. That is so important. Okay? Yep. And let's go to our second question. So when should a financial statement be required to be completed by a Florida licensed CPA? Is it A, B, C, or D? None of the above. A, compiled and audited financial statements. B, reviewed and audited financial statements. C, compiled and reviewed financial statements. Which financial statements are required? Oh, gosh, it's B. Reviewed. See, you know, this computer is so sensitive. You touch it and then boom, it changes. So, all right. Well, thank you guys for your answer. And the correct answer is B, reviewed and audited. All right, let's continue with our presentation. If you have any questions, we will answer them at the end of the presentation, okay? Be sure to come up to us and we'll go ahead and jump right into elections. So we're now going to discuss condominium elections. How does one conduct a successful election? We will review specific timelines with regard to the first and second notice of election, as well as the time that must be given to unit owners to provide them with the intent to run an informational sheet. We will also discuss what makes a person an eligible candidate. In other words, who can run for the board. We will also discuss the information that must be accompanied in the election package and what happens on election day. There are some requirements that must be adhered to prior to the date of election. So at least 60 days prior, associations must send a first notice of election by mail, hand-delivered, or electronically. At least 40 days prior is the notice of intent to be a candidate deadline. At least 35 days prior, candidate information sheet must be submitted to the association. And finally, the second notice of an election must be sent no less than 14 days or more than 34 days prior to the date of an election by mail, hand delivery, or electronically transmitted. The first notice indicates the when by telling us the date and the time of the meeting. It also indicates the where by providing the location of the meeting. Remember, this notice is sent 60 days prior to the election. It is also important to know that the election must be held at the same day and same place as the association's annual meeting. That being said, there must be an annual meeting of the unit owners held at the location provided in the association's bylaws. If the bylaws are silent to where the location is, however, the meeting must be held within 45 miles of the condominium property. So who can run for the board? Who's an eligible candidate? Is it you? I mean, all of you guys are board members. In order to be considered for board membership, you must do these following items. You must give a written notice at least 40 days before the scheduled election. This is self-nomination. You must be eligible to serve on the board of directors at the time of the deadline for submitting a notice of intent to run. A written notice is effective when received by the association by either certified mail, return receipt request, regular U.S. mail, or fax. If personally hand-delivered, the association must issue a receipt acknowledging delivery of the written notice. The candidate information sheet. This must be submitted to the association at least 35 days prior to election day. Candidates may submit a personal information sheet, which can only be a max of one side, 8.5 by 11-inch paper. All right. It may contain the candidate's background, education, qualifications, and other relevant information. Whatever information the candidate deems fit to share. The association must distribute copies of such sheets with the second notice of election. However, it was provided by the candidate. However they submitted it, you have to send a second notice in that way. The association may not edit, alter, or otherwise modify the content on the information sheet. The original copy provided by the candidate becomes part of the official records of the association and must be held for 7 years. The second notice must be sent no less than 14 days or more than 34 days prior to the date of election by mail, hand delivery, or electronically transmitted. What should be included in the package? First, an outer envelope addressed to the person or entity authorized to receive such. A voter's name, space for the unit or unit numbers, space for voter's signature. Second, a small inner envelope, which includes the ballots. Third, any timely submitted candidate information sheet. And fourth, an annual meeting notice, so a copy of agenda, if applicable, a copy of proposed budget. Let's discuss ballots a little further. Ballots must be uniform in color and appearance, same color and font. Ballots must list all eligible candidates in alphabetical order by last name. The ballot cannot indicate whether the candidates are incumbent. Ballots cannot contain space, line for write-ins, so no self-nominating. And and it must not have a space for the voter's signature or method to identify unit identity. Once received by the association, no ballot may be rescinded or changed. Ballots are not to be opened until election meeting. Forgery of a ballot envelope used in a condominium association election or voting certificate is punishable as a crime, and that's under statute 831.01. Electronic voting is not voting by email. It is an option which allows an association to conduct elections and other unit owners' required votes through the use of the internet-based online voting system based on the following procedures. A unit owner's consent in writing. The unit owner's identity has to be authenticated. Through transmission of electronic ballots, the system ensures secrecy. It is confirmed that the system works at least 14 days in advance. Electronic votes counts towards quorum. Board must adopt online voting at special meeting and must allow people to vote by traditional ballot if they wish to do so. So this is optional form of conducting a election. Conducting your election, the association must have additional blank ballots, inner and outer envelopes available at the election. A quorum is not requirement. However, at least 20% of the eligible voters must cast ballots in order for the election to be valid. This is calculated when the outer envelopes are verified against a list of qualified voters. Polls close when the first outer envelope is open, meaning no more ballots may be accepted. Ballot envelopes which contain the secret ballot inside are removed from the outer envelope and placed to the side away from the outer envelopes. Then all ballots are opened and tallied. The highest vote wins. Unit owners may have the election conducted by an election monitor adopted by the Condominium Ombudsman's Office. Upon receipt of a petition by 15% of the total voting interest in a condominium association or 6 unit owners, whichever is greater. All costs associated with the election monitoring process shall be paid to the association. An outgoing board or committee member must relinquish all official records and property of the association in their possession or under their control to the incoming member within 5 days after the election. An outgoing board or committee member who fails to comply with this requirement is personally subject to a civil penalty. Destruction of any official records of a condominium association is deemed a crime and constitutes for a criminal law violation. Any challenge to the election process must be commenced within 60 days after the election results are announced. Within 90 days, newly elected or appointed board members must certify in writing that he or she has read and understood all of the governing documents. This should be provided to the secretary of the association. They may submit a certificate of satisfactory completion of educational curriculum administered by a division-approved condominium provider, which was either taken 1 year before the election or 90 days after being elected or appointed. This is currently what we're doing today. Certification is valid and does not have to be resubmitted as long as the director continuously serves on the board. Quiz time. All right, let's see. What's our question? Let me bat my hand away now, this time so I don't show the answer. When does the first notice of election have to be sent or provided to unit owners? Okay. Can I go through the list? Okay, it's A. Okay. All right, you guys are ready? All right, yes, it's 60 days. Good job, guys. Reminder, these 60 days are calendar days. Only noticing requirements. So there's other important days to note as well. 40 days notice of candidacy, 35 days candidate information sheet, 34 to 14 days second notice of elections. Those are also important dates to remember.
Okay.
All right, second question. What percentage of eligible voters need to cast votes in order to have a valid election?
20.
All right, you guys are saying 20%?
Yes.
Let's see. Yes, D, 20%. A quorum is not required for an election, but 20% is the threshold that must be met for it to stand. This is calculated during the verification process when the outer envelopes are verified against a list of qualified voters. All right. We're gonna if you have questions, we'll take those at the end, so we're gonna continue with the presentation. Now we just have a few more slides, some helpful division information we want to share with you. This is the division of condominium. Florida legislator enacted new requirements for structural inspection for all buildings that are 3 stories or higher to report to the division specific building reporting information on or before January 1st, 2023. Current board members of an association may provide their building information online by simply completing the form, which can be found on our website. The link is here. There's also a QR code that can take you directly to the link, so you can use your phone for your convenience for that. You may also submit this information via email at ctmhbuildingreporting@myfloridalicense.com or mail it in at USPS at the Division of Florida Condominium Timeshare and Mobile Home, Attention Building Reporting. Sorry. And for instant access to the division information, to view some helpful condominium information, did you know gallery of our visual information, please feel free to visit our website by scanning the QR code with your mobile device to the left. If you are a board member and haven't already done so, you may register with our division. All you have to do is scan the QR code to the right. Doing so, you will have access to our mailing list and be the first to receive communication to events and presentations similar to today. The department has an online system for payment of their annual division fees, which accept credit cards and electronic checks. By scanning the QR code, you can create an account online. If you have questions, you may contact us through our customer contact center number, which is 850-488-1122. Or you can make an appointment online for a 30-minute session on our website to visit with our compliance staff to discuss general questions either in our Doral, Fort Lauderdale, or Tallahassee compliance office. If you scan the QR code to the right, you will get that information. Or our online contact form can also be found at www.myfloridalicense.com/contact-us/. You can also create an appointment to meet with the Ombudsman's office in Fort Lauderdale. Scan the QR code to contact the Office of the Condominium Ombudsman for information on how to petition for an election monitor. You can email them at ombudsman@myfloridalicense.com or give them a call at 954-202-3234. There's a Spanish line as well, 954-202-3235. Finally, for updated information on division events, like the one that we conducted today, please visit our online event calendar by scanning the QR code on your screen for a direct link. So guys, we have come to the end of our presentation, and we would like to thank you for being such a cooperating audience. And we enjoyed our time with you. If you should have any questions, we'll be here to answer them the best of our knowledge, or we will take your contact information, and once we get back to our office, we will give you a phone call and try to get those questions answered for you, okay? Thank you, it was my pleasure, and enjoy the rest of your day.
Hi, everyone. Listen, before you all break camp, next week, next Wednesday, here in this room at 10 o'clock, there will be a presentation by an engineer from Stone Building Solutions, and the topic is the structural reserve integrity studies. So if you're on a board of a building that's 3 stories or higher, this will be a good place for you to be. But everyone's welcome. All right? Thank you.
It's not for all.
And once again, for